There is something that millions of married couples believe with complete confidence, something passed down from generation to generation, whispered in family gatherings, repeated by elders with absolute certainty. And yet science tells a completely different story. What if the things you were taught about intimacy in marriage, about timing, about frequency, about conception, were not just incomplete but actually working against you? This is not about judgment. This is about truth. Because the gap between what people believe and what is medically accurate is wider than most people ever realize. And today we are going to close that gap quietly, carefully, and completely. Think about the moment a couple gets married. There is joy. There is hope. There is a future being imagined. And almost immediately the questions begin. When should we try for a child? How often? Is there a right time? A right way? And because these questions feel private, almost too personal to ask a doctor, most couples turn to the people around them. Family, community, tradition. And what they receive is a collection of beliefs, some rooted in culture, some rooted in religion, some rooted in nothing more than repetition, the idea that if something has been said enough times, it must be true. Wait this many days. Do it at this specific time. This method will give you a smarter child. This timing will determine the gender. These beliefs feel wise. They feel safe. They feel familiar. But here is the quiet, uncomfortable truth that most people are never told. Many of these beliefs have no scientific foundation whatsoever. And some of them, without anyone intending harm, are actually reducing the chances of conception, delaying pregnancies and causing unnecessary stress in marriages that deserve peace. So let us begin, not with judgment of tradition, but with the calm, grounded understanding of what science actually knows. Every culture in the world has developed its own set of beliefs around intimacy and reproduction. This is natural. Before modern medicine existed, people observed patterns, made connections, and created explanations. That is simply human nature. But we are no longer living in that era, and yet the myths remain, deeply embedded, emotionally charged, socially enforced. Myth number 1. You must wait a specific number of days between intimacy to improve pregnancy chances. This belief is incredibly widespread. The idea being that spacing out intimacy somehow builds up fertility or increases the chance of conception. Here is what the science says. The female fertility window, the time during which conception is actually possible, is remarkably short. It centers around ovulation, which typically occurs around day 14 of a 28-day menstrual cycle. But every woman is different. Every cycle is different. The egg, once released, survives for only 12 to 24 hours. Sperm, under the right conditions, can survive inside the female reproductive system for up to 5 days, but their peak effectiveness is within the first 48 to 72 hours. This means that waiting extended periods between intimacy does not improve fertility. In fact, for couples trying to conceive, medical guidance consistently recommends regular intimacy every 2 to 3 days throughout the cycle, without obsessing over specific windows. Spacing too far apart often means missing the fertile window entirely. Myth number 2. The timing or position of intimacy determines the intelligence of the child. This belief carries significant emotional weight in many communities. The idea that a couple's behavior during conception directly shapes the mental or intellectual destiny of their future child. It is a beautiful idea in many ways. It reflects the depth of love parents already feel before a child is even born. But medically, there is no evidence to support this. Intelligence is shaped by genetics, by nutrition during pregnancy, by the quality of prenatal care, by breastfeeding, by the environment in which a child is raised, and by countless complex biological and social factors. The moment of conception, the specific timing, or physical arrangement does not determine cognitive development. What does matter profoundly is the health of the mother before and during pregnancy, her nutrition, her stress levels, her access to medical care, her emotional well-being. These are the real determinants, and they begin long before conception itself. Myth number 3. Intimacy during certain lunar phases or specific times of the month improves fertility. Lunar calendars have guided agriculture for centuries, and there is a certain poetry to the idea that human reproduction follows the rhythms of the moon. But reproductively speaking, fertility is governed by hormones, not by the position of the moon in the sky. Ovulation is triggered by a hormonal cascade inside the body, specifically the surge of luteinizing hormone, or LH. This process is internal, biological, and entirely independent of external celestial events. What actually tracks ovulation accurately? Basal body temperature monitoring, ovulation predictor kits, cervical mucus observation, and in clinical settings, ultrasound monitoring, not lunar calendars. Now, here is something that does not get discussed often enough: the emotional and psychological dimension of trying to conceive. When couples become consumed by rules, by the pressure of timing, by anxiety about doing things correctly, by the fear of getting it wrong, something very real happens inside the body. Stress increases cortisol levels. Elevated cortisol disrupts the hormonal balance that regulates ovulation in women and sperm production in men. In other words, the anxiety about conception can actually interfere with conception. This is not theoretical. Studies consistently show that stress is a significant contributing factor to unexplained fertility difficulties in otherwise healthy couples. The irony is painful. Couples following rigid rules, believing they are doing everything right, may be creating the very hormonal environment that works against them. This is why the emotional climate of a marriage matters medically, not just personally. A relationship that is warm, connected, low in performance anxiety, and high in genuine affection creates the hormonal conditions most favorable for conception. Science and human love, it turns out, are pointing in exactly the same direction. Let us now go deeper into what science actually understands about healthy conception, because this is where the most important knowledge lives. The female fertility cycle, a typical menstrual cycle, runs between 21 and 35 days, with 28 days being average. Ovulation, the release of a mature egg from the ovary, typically occurs 14 days before the next expected period, regardless of overall cycle length. For a woman with a 28-day cycle, ovulation falls around day 14. For a woman with a 35-day cycle, ovulation may fall around day 21. The fertile window spans approximately 6 days, the 5 days before ovulation and the day of ovulation itself, because sperm can survive in the reproductive tract for up to 5 days. Understanding your specific cycle is far more valuable than following a generalized rule passed down through cultural tradition. Male fertility is often left out of these conversations entirely, but it is equally important. Sperm health is influenced by temperature, which is why the testes are located outside the body, at a slightly lower temperature than core body temperature. Prolonged sitting, tight clothing, and heat exposure can all reduce sperm quality. Sperm health is also significantly influenced by diet, hydration, sleep quality, smoking, alcohol consumption, and overall physical health. For couples actively trying to conceive, both partners' health matters equally. Key factors that actually improve conception chances. 1. Regular, relaxed intimacy throughout the cycle, not restricted to a narrow window based on myths. 2. Tracking ovulation through reliable methods. Basal body temperature charts, ovulation predictor kits, or medical monitoring. 3. Prenatal vitamins, particularly folic acid. For women planning pregnancy, ideally begun at least 3 months before trying to conceive. 4. Maintaining a healthy body weight. Both underweight and overweight conditions can disrupt ovulation. 5. Reducing or eliminating alcohol and tobacco, both of which measurably reduce fertility in men and women. 6. Managing chronic stress through healthy coping mechanisms, exercise, sleep, connection, and professional support when needed. 7. Regular medical checkups. Conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, thyroid dysfunction, and endometriosis can affect fertility but respond well to early medical intervention. Beyond the medical and biological, there is something deeper worth discussing. What does a healthy, intimate relationship in marriage actually look like? Because here is a pattern that appears again and again in couples struggling with conception, and even in couples not trying at all. When intimacy becomes mechanical, when it is reduced to a checklist of rules and timing and performance, it loses the emotional dimension that makes it meaningful. And that emotional dimension is not separate from health. It is health. Medical research on relationship quality and reproductive outcomes consistently shows that emotional connection, mutual respect, and physical affection independent of conception goals are positively associated with better hormonal regulation, lower baseline stress, and improved overall physical health in both partners. A marriage where both partners feel seen, respected, and emotionally safe is not just a happier marriage. It is a healthier one in measurable physiological terms. This is the part of the conversation that no myth addresses. No traditional rule about timing accounts for this, because the rules were created by communities trying to make sense of something complex. And what they often missed, what science is now confirming, is that the quality of the relationships surrounding intimacy matters as much as the biology inside it. Couples who approach intimacy with warmth, humor, patience, and genuine emotional presence rather than anxiety, pressure, and rigid adherence to external rules consistently report better outcomes, both in terms of relationship satisfaction and reproductive health. Perhaps you are watching this and recognizing something. Perhaps you have been following rules that you never questioned. Perhaps there has been tension in your marriage around timing, around pressure, around the anxiety of doing it right. Perhaps you have felt the quiet sadness of months passing without the pregnancy you hoped for, while following every instruction you were given. If that is your experience, then this message is for you. It is not your fault. You were given information that was presented as truth. You followed it with sincerity and love. That sincerity is not the problem. The problem is that the information was incomplete, or incorrect, or culturally constructed rather than medically grounded. And now you have better information. The most important thing you can do for your reproductive health is simple, though not always easy. Consult a qualified medical professional, a gynecologist, a fertility specialist if needed. Not because something is wrong with you, but because personalized medical guidance based on your specific physiology, your specific cycle, your specific circumstances is infinitely more valuable than any generalized rule. Every couple is different. Every body is different. And you deserve guidance that is tailored to you, not to a cultural average from generations ago. Before we close, 2 questions worth sitting with. The first, how many of the beliefs you hold about your own health, not just reproductive health, but health in general, were given to you by people who loved you, but who were working with incomplete information? And the second, if stress and emotional disconnection can measurably affect physical health outcomes in marriage, what does that say about how we should prioritize emotional well-being alongside medical care? These are not rhetorical questions. They are invitations to think more carefully, to question with respect, not cynicism, to seek knowledge actively rather than inheriting it passively. There is something quietly powerful about the moment a person decides to exchange inherited belief for verified knowledge. It is not a rejection of culture. It is not a dismissal of tradition. It is simply the recognition that love, real love, the kind that builds families and sustains marriages, deserves to be supported by truth. The couples who thrive are not the ones who followed the most rigid rules. They are the ones who communicated openly, who sought real answers, who treated each other with patience through uncertainty, who understood that the path to a healthy family begins not with a perfect formula, but with a healthy relationship, an informed mind, and the willingness to ask better questions. That willingness, quiet, humble, and honest, is the most powerful thing any couple can bring to their journey together. Take care of your health. Take care of your relationship. And when in doubt, ask a doctor.